In 1965, researchers in Wisconsin ran an experiment that should never have been approved and never will be again. They took baby monkeys away from their mothers and raised them in complete isolation. No contact with another living creature, just a bottle and 4 bare walls. Within weeks, those monkeys were rocking back and forth, biting themselves, screaming at nothing. By adulthood, many of them couldn't function socially at all. Some never recovered. That experiment, as cruel as it was, revealed something we now know applies just as much to humans. We are not built to be alone, not emotionally, not psychologically, not even biologically. Loneliness doesn't just feel bad, it operates on the human body the way smoking or obesity does. It can take years off your life. So today, let's actually answer the question nobody really stops to ask. Why do humans need friends at all? And the answer goes a lot deeper than just, it's nice to have company. Here's the uncomfortable starting point. Humans are, biologically speaking, one of the weakest large animals on the planet. We have no claws worth mentioning, no natural armor, no real speed, and teeth that couldn't seriously hurt much of anything. On our own, in the wild, a single human doesn't stand a chance against most predators. So how did we end up at the top of the food chain? Not through individual strength, through groups. For nearly the entire span of human evolution, survival meant being part of a tight social unit. People who got rejected from the group, exiled, abandoned, left behind, usually died. Not eventually, quickly. No protection from predators, no help finding food, no one to share warmth with at night. This is why social psychologists believe humans evolved something called the need to belong, a built-in psychological drive, as fundamental as hunger or thirst, that pushes us toward forming bonds with other people. Researchers Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary, who first formalized this theory in 1995, argued that this isn't a preference. It's a requirement baked into the architecture of the human brain by hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure. In other words, you don't want friends the way you want a vacation. You need friends the way you need food. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. Neuroscientists have found that social pain, the feeling of being excluded, rejected, or left out, activates the exact same regions of the brain as physical pain. In a well-known study by Nanmi Eisenberger at UCLA, participants played a simple ball-tossing game inside an MRI scanner, except the game was rigged. At some point, the other players stopped passing them the ball entirely, excluding them on purpose. The brain scans showed activity spiking in the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that lights up when you stub your toe or burn your hand. Social rejection isn't just a metaphorical kind of pain. To your brain, it is genuinely processed as actual physical pain. This makes sense when you think about why it evolved. For most of human history, being excluded from the group wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a death sentence. So the brain developed an alarm system, the same kind of alarm system it uses for physical injury, specifically to make sure you never ignore the warning signs of social isolation. That sting you feel when a friend doesn't text back, or you're left out of a plan, that's not you being overly sensitive. That's an ancient survival mechanism doing exactly what it was designed to do. Friendship doesn't just affect how you feel, it measurably affects how long you live. In 2010, researchers Julianne Holt-Lundstad, Timothy Smith, and Bradley Layton published a massive meta-analysis combining data from over 300,000 people. They found that having strong social relationships increased a person's odds of survival by 50%, and that the protective effect of social connection on mortality was comparable to quitting smoking and stronger than the effects of exercise or maintaining a healthy weight. Loneliness, on the other hand, has been linked to increased inflammation throughout the body, higher blood pressure, weakened immune response, and elevated cortisol, the stress hormone that, when chronically high, damages nearly every system it touches. A landmark study published by the same research team found that loneliness carries a mortality risk comparable to obesity, and in some analyses, comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Friends aren't just good for your mood. They are, in a very literal clinical sense, a part of your immune system and your cardiovascular health. Your social life is a health metric, the same way your blood pressure or cholesterol is. So what is friendship actually doing, mechanically, inside you? When you spend time with people you trust, your body releases oxytocin, often nicknamed the bonding hormone. Oxytocin lowers cortisol, reduces anxiety, and creates the physical sensation of safety and calm. This is the same hormone released during childbirth and breastfeeding, repurposed by evolution to also strengthen social bonds between unrelated individuals, which tells you how seriously the body takes the job of keeping you connected to other people. Friendship also activates the brain's reward circuitry. Talking with a close friend triggers dopamine release in regions like the ventral striatum, the same reward pathway involved in eating good food or achieving a goal. This is part of why genuine connection feels good in a way that scrolling social media, despite being technically social, usually doesn't. Passive scrolling doesn't reliably trigger oxytocin release the way face-to-face connection does, which may help explain why people can spend hours on social platforms and still feel lonelier afterward, not less. There's also a cognitive benefit. Robin Dunbar, the anthropologist famous for Dunbar's number, the idea that humans can only maintain about 150 meaningful relationships, argues that an enormous portion of human brain evolution, particularly expansion of the neocortex, was driven specifically by the demands of tracking and managing complex social relationships. In other words, a significant part of why human brains got so big in the first place may be because socializing is cognitively expensive, and evolution rewarded the brains that could handle it. Not while friendships serve the same purpose, and research suggests humans actually need different types. Psychologists distinguish between what's sometimes called your inner circle, the 1 to 5 people you'd call at 2 a.m. in a crisis, and your wider social network, the acquaintances, co-workers, and casual friends who provide what researchers call weak ties. Surprisingly, studies on happiness and information access have found that weak ties matter more than people expect. Sociologist Mark Granovetter's famous research on job searching found that people were significantly more likely to find new opportunities through casual acquaintances than through close friends, because close friends tend to know the same things and people you already know, while acquaintances open doors into entirely different social worlds. So the picture that emerges is this: humans don't just need a friend. We need a layered network, deep bonds for emotional security, and a wider web of looser connections for information, opportunity, and a basic sense of being embedded in a community. Losing either layer creates a different kind of deficit, which is part of why moving to a new city can feel lonely even if you still talk to your close friends back home every day. You've lost the wider web even if the deep bonds are intact. Here's the part that should genuinely concern us. Despite having more ways to connect than any generation in human history, loneliness is rising sharply, particularly among young people. The U.S. Surgeon General released an advisory in 2023 explicitly calling loneliness an epidemic, citing research that social disconnection has become as significant a public health threat as obesity or substance abuse. Some researchers point to a specific mismatch. Our brains evolved for small groups, face-to-face contact, and shared physical presence, sitting around an actual fire, working alongside actual people. Digital interaction technically satisfies the appearance of socializing without providing the biological inputs, like oxytocin release and synchronized physical presence, that the brain actually requires to register a bond as real and safe. We may be feeding the brain's need to belong with something that looks like food but doesn't contain the nutrients. So why do humans need friends? Because for nearly all of human history, friendship wasn't a nice-to-have. It was survival infrastructure. The brain still treats it that way, registering rejection as physical pain, registering connection as safety, and quietly tracking your social bonds as a health metric as important as your heart rate. We didn't evolve to thrive alone, no matter how comfortable, technologically advanced, or self-sufficient we become. The Wisconsin monkeys raised in isolation never recovered, because nothing replaced what was missing. Humans are luckier. Connection can be rebuilt at almost any age, and even small amounts of genuine, present, in-person contact measurably improve health and mood. If this video made you want to actually text that friend you've been meaning to call, do it before you close the tab. Subscribe for more research-backed deep dives like this one, and let me know in the comments, who's the one friend you'd call at 2 a.m.